Okay, good evening, Secretary. Roll.
Directors Huang, here. Sethy,
Here.
Weed,
Here.
Akbari, and Gunther.
Here. Director Huang, please lead us in this.
With allegiance, the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah. Turn to the manager for some housekeeping. This evening's meeting.
No problem, President Gunther. On behalf of the ACWD Board of Directors, I'd like to welcome the public's participation in this board meeting. My name is Ed Stevenson, and I serve as the district's general manager. Members of the public may participate in this board meeting in person or remotely by either using the Zoom application or by telephone. Any member of the public present who wishes to make comments may approach the speaker's podium at the appropriate time. For those participating remotely, note that the meeting agenda, staff reports, and presentation materials for this meeting are all available on the district's website at acwd.org. You may reference the instructions at the top of the agenda for how to participate using the controls in the Zoom app or your dial pad if participating by telephone audio. Again, thank you all for attending, and President Gunther, that completes my housekeeping remarks.
And then we'll move on to the next item, public comments. Is there anybody online that would we have a hand from Mr. Nishimura. And we will start then with Mr. Nishimura. Go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We got you.
Okay. Good evening, and thank you, President Gunther. I have two unrelated topics, neither of which are in tonight's agenda, so I will address them at this point tonight. The first has to do with a request which I made some time ago. I find the process to obtain the Zoom link to attend these meetings somewhat onerous. To obtain the link, one needs to download the entire board packet. Tonight's is 203 pages in length and 17.1 megabytes in size. For those of us on a mobile device with perhaps a less than stellar network connection, downloading a file of that size is wasteful and burdensome just to get a single URL link. At least, the agenda itself with the Zoom link should be available as a standalone document. 4 pages and 32 kilobytes, 547 times smaller than the board packet. Even better would be a click to attend button on the ACWD homepage, so that one doesn't have to download a file and look for a URL. The second topic is the Umberg report, which was included in the board packet several months ago. If I recall, the list was sorted by the first name of the individuals listed. My request is to sort the list by last name. Members of the public are familiar with the district staff and directors on a last name basis. For example, when staff are introduced at board meetings, they are introduced as Mr. or Mrs. with a last name. Exacerbating the situations are individuals whose legal first name differs from their colloquial first name. For the next Umberg report, I respectfully ask that the list be sorted by the last name of the individuals listed. Thank you for your time.
Mr. President, if you don't mind, I'd just like to make a quick remark about the first comment. And thank you, Mr. Nishimura, for your suggestion. You're right, you did make that suggestion a while back. Since then, I believe we've begun posting the Zoom URL from the calendar on the homepage. So for instance, if you click on tonight's board meeting on the calendar on the homepage, you'll go to a page with the Zoom link directly on that page. So you don't have to download the packet. The packet is there, but you could also just click on the Zoom link to join the meeting from the website itself. We may not have done a great job getting back to you after we had made that change some time ago.
Pardon me here. I didn't understand the nature of the second request here.
Yeah, I understand the nature of the request, and I'll work with staff. I think it's a reasonable request, but By state law, once a year, we submit a report in the board packet of expense reimbursements for all district employees and board members. And I think he's asking for that to be sorted by the last name of the individual rather than first name, and that's something we can work on.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, it sounds like staff is looking at both items. Your comments, further comments from online? I don't see anybody in the audience.
I don't see any more hands up online, and right, for the record, there's no one in the audience that's approaching the podium at this point.
Okay, we will move on then to the consent calendar. Do any directors have anything they would like to add to the consent calendar this evening?
Before you all make a suggestion, I just did want to point out that item 5.2, staff did recommend that be added to the consent calendar. But at this time, we've looked at the location of that, a part of the project that's covered under that item. And we've had a discussion with Director Weed about potentially recusing himself from that item.
Apparently that is within 8,000 feet arc of the property I have an interest in Mission San Jose.
So you may not want to include that on the consent calendar.
All
So,
right, I'll move the consent calendar with the addition of action item 5.1.
Got a motion? Do we have a second?
I will second the motion to add item 5.1 to the consent calendar.
Secretary, call the roll for the motion to add 5.1.
Directors Huang,
Aye.
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
Akbari, and Gunther.
Aye. Motion to move the consent calendar is amended?
Yeah, I think I skipped over that.
I'll second.
Motion in a second. Secretary, call the roll, please.
Directors Huang,
Aye.
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
Akbari, and Gunther.
Aye. Okay, then we'll dive into the meeting here. Does staff want to take item 5.3 first?
Okay,
Well,
I assume that I'll be
Yeah.
accusing myself in the room as well, even though it's the extended
Yes,
arc.
Director Weed has a conflict and he will leave the room right now.
Do that too.
Okay, so item 5.2 is a resolution finding the main renewal Fremont Crestwood Street project exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act and approving the project. Obviously, staff had recommended this go to consent, but we're very happy to provide a short staff report, or the board is free to take up the action. Staff's recommendation is by motion, adopt a resolution 1, finding the main renewal Fremont Crestwood Street project be exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, and 2, approving implementation of the project job 21433.
Where's the nearest cross street to Crestwood?
Well, let's see. I'll turn to Mr. O'Reilly, who's filling in as our Director of Engineering and Technology, but I'm looking at the table provided in the packet. It looks to me like the intersection with Crestwood would be Cedarwood Drive and Mintwood Street, between Cedarwood Drive and Mintwood Street. So 2 intersections there.
That is in Mission San Jose?
Oh, no, apologies. Yeah, this project actually includes several sites where we're doing main renewals in multiple sort of clusters around, really, there are a number of places within the city of Fremont. One of those clusters is nearby, or at least within 1,000 feet or so of some property that Director Weed owns
I see.
or
Okay.
has a financial interest in.
All right, great.
Part of the project is down by Ellsworth. Jerome.
Mhm.
That's correct. There's 12 different streets as part of this project.
Yeah, I understand, because the project name, we call it Crestwood. It would have been a really, really long project name if we had included all of the streets. Would-
Ryan and Escobar.
I know where Escobar is.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Would the board like staff to provide a quick report?
We have a motion then to move the item.
I will move staff recommendation.
Second,
Secretary, call the roll, please.
Directors Huang,
Aye.
Sethy,
aye.
Weed, Akbari, and Gunther.
Aye. We got 5.3. Director Weed back in.
Get everybody back together.
Actually, can we make 5.3 disappear?
Sure, the board can just skip an item if it wants to.
Does that mean he can't retire?
We're getting more time out of him by the minute here.
Okay, for the record, Director Weed has now rejoined the board in the boardroom, and we'll move to item 5.3. And 5.3 is a resolution honoring Salim Zurich upon his retirement from district service. And this is one where I think there's been some thought amongst the board that they may not want to take action on this at all. I'd certainly support that. Maybe we can change a few words in the resolution, like never retire, something like that, add some nevers. Obviously, Salim has been a huge part of this organization. He's been one of the most positive people around and one of the most sort of team-oriented people around, has been a huge part of our culture. And I just learned today that somehow he has spanned his entire career without once participating in a board meeting. And I thought that's a travesty. He needs to be here much longer to make up for some like lost opportunities. So no, this is again one of those bittersweet times. I've often teased Salim about how he's been basically stalking me my whole career. He and I started here as interns at about the same time. We both moved on to workplaces in Oakland, downtown Oakland, at about the same time. We both came back to ACWD at about the same time. So yeah, I always kind of thought he was stalking me until he reminded me one day that those time periods were several days apart and I was stalking him. I didn't realize it at the time, but he's going to be sorely missed around here. And also I will pass the item on to our Director of Water Resources, Ms. Heides.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. And before I read the staff report, I did just want to share a few things and welcome joining us online, Salim's family, his wife Maria, his kids Aiden and Sophia. So thanks for being here today. And I know, as Mr. Stevenson said, Salim is going to be greatly missed throughout the organization, and especially in our department where he's had a huge impact. And I just want to share a couple of quick things. This is the 25th anniversary this year of the district's well team that Salim has been an integral part of the entire time, and with huge contributions. He's mentored 20 interns, which is no small feat over the time. And he's closed 102 cleanup sites for our groundwater cleanup programs, and for which we're very grateful. So with that, I will go ahead and read the staff report. So summary, Salim Zurich will retire from the Alameda County Water District after more than 26 years of service with the district, and his last day in the office will be April 26, 2024. Salim started his professional career with the district on July 8th, 1998 as an Engineer 1 in the Groundwater Resources Division, and he was promoted to Engineer 2 on August 23rd, 1999. Before coming to the district as an engineer, he worked at URS Corporation as an environmental consultant, performing pump tests, various groundwater-related field work, and report writing. And prior to working at the URS Corporation, Salim was a groundwater resources intern at the district. Salim's primary duties with the district involve oversight of investigation and cleanup of leaking underground fuel tank and site cleanup program sites in conformance with local, regional, and state guidelines, as well as participating in other groundwater protection and management programs. Of special note, Salim has played a key role in the district's compliance with the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, including managing the Alternative Update and Model Upgrade Grant Project. Most recently, he has taken a leadership role in the investigation activities regarding polyfluoral alkyl substances within the Niles Cone and coordination with the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board. Salim has served a critical role for the district by being the production well team leader, assisting operations and maintenance with production well rehabilitation, conducting pump tests, and being the groundwater lead on all projects located at well fields. This included being the lead coordinator on identifying future well locations and well fields. Salim also played a key role through the years in establishing and updating technical procedures, explaining the importance of protecting the groundwater basin to customers, students, and responsible parties. He has been recognized as a subject matter expert on the district's wells and has provided training and guidance to other staff in groundwater resources, including over 20 interns in his career and others throughout the district. Salim has consistently performed his duties with the highest level of competence, integrity, and dedication. He will be greatly missed by his many friends and coworkers at the district. And I will personally miss Salim, as Mr. Stevenson mentioned, his incredible positivity, his contributions to our own team, and promoting just a really positive culture around the department and the district has just been, it's been a privilege to work with him over the years. So with that, I'm a little sorry to read the recommendation, but by motion, tonight's recommendation is to adopt a resolution honoring Salim Zarek and expressing appreciation for his 26 years of dedicated service to the district.
There a motion, we want to take the motion first and then discuss, or should we just open it up and discuss and maybe not? make a
Sure, I'll
motion?
make a motion to
We got the
approve the
motion.
resolution reluctantly.
Oh, well, okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second. Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll open up the comments. Director Sethy.
Yeah, I'll start off. Salim, I want to thank you for all of your years of service and contributions to the district. I find it especially noteworthy that you made such an effort to help interns and other employees in the district. And as such, your legacy is going to live on for quite a while, district. And I'm wishing you well in retirement or wherever you want to pursue your new interests, but it's always a sad day when somebody who's been so valuable to the district is departing. So I wish you good luck, and you and your family.
Yeah. Again, thank you. The corporate knowledge that someone has working day to day is extraordinary, and I trust when we get in a pinch, you'll be there to square us up. And maybe even come back to a board meeting that you successfully avoided all these years.
Well, now that you're a subject matter expert, you might be charging some very high consulting rates.
He's agreed to provide services for life at no cost
Oh, thanks.
Oh,
in exchange for the resolution.
you want to have a parking pass if you do that. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Wow. So Salim, I agree with what Director Sethy and Director Lee said. But on top of that, I just wanted to let you know that he never never attended a board meeting. I remember all these great conversations with you and presentation at a committee meeting. Really, well, closing 120 cleanup sites? Is that what I heard from Laura?
102.
102. Okay, I'm dyslexic. That is really impressive, right? Is your effort and the effort on our groundwater cleanup team that actually allow us to retain our independence under Sigma, that allow us to retain our ability to control the destiny of our own groundwater basin. Thank you for all your work. If it's not for your work and your team, I think we would have a much longer and harder discussion under Sigma to allow us to still having control of our basin. So thank you. And thank you for jumping right in with the PFAS. It's an emergent contaminant and we are ahead of the curve. Is efforts from people like you and the rest of the staff on the PFAS team, right? That kind of allow us to be in the position where we are right now, to be able to assure our customers that we know what we're doing and that we are committed to supply high quality water to our customers. So thank you very much for that. And thank you to your family, as usual. This is not just a job for our employee, right? When you're dedicated to this district, usually your family has to chip in terms of time that they won't have with you, time your wife has to spend taking care of your kids when you're perhaps not at a board meeting, but at a committee meeting. So thank you so very much for your service. Enjoy your retirement. Come back and see us. Have a lot of fun. But maybe just not tell me too much about it, then I will get really jealous. Have a great retirement.
Name, I hope the retirement thing isn't very catchy this evening. I've heard at least one other name mentioned about chasing you or you chasing him. But I'm looking out in the crowd and I'm seeing some others that may be, yeah, don't think about it, okay? Yeah, you know I'm watching over here. And actually, though, it's very appropriate this evening. The next item, groundwater assessment. You picked a perfect meeting, a perfect time. We only meet this night once a year because of this act. And you played a vital role in this thing. You know, if it hadn't been for the work you've done, we may not be able to do this. So, you know, I found it's great you're retiring this evening with the next item coming up. This is your item. You know, the people think of the water district and they think of the guys out and believe me, the other people are great and important, but don't think about the groundwater people. You just sink a well, just sink a well somewhere. It'll happen. Treatment plant operators, you got a treatment plant to see. The field workers out turning the valves, people fixing leaks. Once they don't see, there's a lot of people behind the scenes. Finance, don't really see finance, but you don't see groundwater either. Heck, we can't even see the groundwater. It's down there. It's not even visible. So, you know, what you do is so vital. What you've done has been so vital and it's greatly appreciated. And because of that work, you know, the next item will be on the agenda next year. I hope. So thank you for all your work, all the years. Enjoy your retirement. Wish you weren't retiring, but enjoy your retirement. You deserve it. I say thank you to everybody who does go on retirement. Deserve it. Do you have anything you would like to say to the board? I give you a chance to speak at a board meeting now.
Salim, you know what your
You better be
punishment-
good after 26.
Salim, you know what your punishment is tonight? You now have a chance to listen to the entire staff report on item 5.4.
I picked the best one.
Punishment.
This is the best meeting we have all year.
Good evening. First of all, I want to thank my wife, Maria, my son, Aiden, and my daughter, Sophia, for their love and support. Unfortunately, they couldn't be here because of where they live, so it's pretty far. I want to thank the district for making my dream come true. What was my dream? The first money I ever earned was selling cold water when I was 6 years old. The first job I ever dreamed of was becoming a water resources engineer. After watching a documentary about drilling and installing a water well in an African village, again when I was 6 years old. The villagers were dancing and singing when the artesian well was shooting in the air. That's when I told myself I want to do that. Of course, not knowing what that was. I got my bachelor's degree in engineering. I got my master's degree in engineering, also focusing specifically on well design, drilling, and completion. My dream came true when I joined the district as a groundwater resources engineering intern, then as a groundwater resource engineer. Unfortunately, I have not had a chance to go to Africa yet, but I was able to remotely help a village in Tanzania on a water well that they were having lots of problems with. So I'm forever grateful for the district for the last 26 plus years of your wonderful journey. I knew I had to join a top-notch agency within the first days when the ACWD family welcomed me as a member of the family. Benjamin Franklin once said, when the well is dry, we know the worth of water. The district knew the worth of water when it was formed 110 years ago to primarily protect Niles Corn groundwater basin. And we know the worth of water even more so now. The ACWD team strongly believes in its mission and performs its duties so successfully. We all believe that what we do is what we love to do, and that's why we are so successful. Our managers have created a team environment where there are no barriers. Transparency and open door policy and the ability to freely discuss ideas with any team members are the foundation of our success. The district staff perform their part so well and work together so well, it's like a world-class Philharmonic orchestra. I have worked with 5 general managers and have continuously seen improvements and strongly believe that despite all the challenges, the district has remained focused on its core mission. If I had to do this all over again, without any hesitation, I would still be an engineer and would love to join the district because I know ACWD is best water district in the world. I put my heart and soul in my work, like all my teammates, and when I leave the district, my heart and soul will stay with my ACWD family. I will miss my ACWD family. Thank you so much.
So much. Sure. Would anybody in the public or in the room like to comment? Welcome to it. Smiles. Smiles say a lot. Anybody online? I don't see hands coming up. Yes, with that, we'll move on to, we have the motion in a second. Yes, we do.
Can we?
Oh, here we've got a hand up. Nishimura.
Thank you, President Gunther. I mean, after that presentation and at that speech, I think it would be, I feel compelled to make a comment. I don't know Salim personally, but based on what I just heard, I think, this is exactly the kind of employee that the district, it's the kind of employee that makes ACWD such a special place to work, and also is the kind of district that upholds its mission to deliver safe, clean, reliable, affordable water to its customers. So as a member of the public and an ACWD customer, I thank you very much for your dedicated years of service to the district. And I wish you a lot of luck and happiness in your retirement. Thank you.
Very much. We have the motion. We have the second, correct? It's time to call the roll.
Directors Huang,
Reluctantly, aye.
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
Akbari, and Gunther.
Aye. Done. You take some photos.
I can tell you that resolution was very near the shredder on multiple occasions, but it did find its way here this evening. Go down. Salim, we're going to record you in our records forever, but you got to come here, get your picture taken. Nice.
Thank you.
This is time to move on to item 5.4.
Mhm. That's right. So 5.4 is a public hearing and resolutions on the replenishment assessment for fiscal year 2024-25, including finding the replenishment assessment exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act.
So I'll read in item here because this is the replenishment assessment rate public hearing. So on behalf of the Board of Directors, I'd like to welcome the public and your participation in this evening's public hearing. This public hearing will be on the proposed increase to the replenishment assessment rate for groundwater pumped or extracted for purposes other than agriculture and municipal recreation. Thank you for attending in person, online, and by phone. Again, the purpose of this public hearing is to consider the proposed increase to the replenishment assessment rate, which only applies to the operation of water wells to extract groundwater, not to most customers who receive water from the ACWD distribution system. I'd like to review the ground rules for the public hearing process. I will open the public hearing and ACW staff will make a brief presentation. Upon conclusion of the presentation, the board and ACW staff will receive public comments and or protest. Board will receive all comments without responding. Upon conclusion of the public's comments or protest, the board will request input from staff, respond to the questions, comments that were raised by the public, deliberate on the issues, and then close the public hearing. Public comment, each person has 5 minutes to comment. We will require strict compliance with this time limit, so everybody is treated the same way. Again, staff will provide you with 15-second advance warning. We'll let you know when time is up. Speaker requests. Since this hearing is being conducted both in person and online by teleconference, persons who wish to make public comments can indicate so verbally by raising your hand in Zoom. We open the public comment portion of the hearing. Those participating in person, their speaker cards in the back of the boardroom. If you haven't already done so, please submit a speaker card to the district secretary. Completing a card is voluntary. However, if you've already submitted a protest, would like your comment to be counted against a protest against the proposed increase, the speaker card can be used for that purpose. If you're participating online and by phone, the district secretary will unmute remote meeting participants who have raised their hand when making public comments. Please be sure to unmute your own phone line or computer microphone so that you may be heard. For those participating online that may not have a microphone on their computer, please dial in by the phone, the number given on the agenda. If you are participating online and we are unable to hear you during public comment portions of the hearing, please use the chat box featured of Zoom interface to get the attention of the district secretary. You state your name and service address when making a verbal comment. Providing this information is voluntary. However, if you haven't already submitted a written protest and would like your comment to be counted as a protest against the proposed increase, stating your name, service address, and intent to protest can be used for that purpose. Okay, now like the public hearing is now open. Staff will make a presentation. I ask you to refrain from asking questions or making comments until the public comment portion of the public hearing. General Manager will now proceed with the staff presentations.
Thank you, President Gunther. And this is an annual item that's reviewed by the board, consistent with the Replenishment Assessment Act. And it follows several other touch points with the board over the last several months, including last month's excellent presentation by Mr. Hollowell, who's here this evening. And I heard remarks from the board related to Mr. Zarek's retirement, and I think it's totally appropriate that this item is done this evening when he's here to receive his retirement resolution. This pertains to our replenishment assessment fees, which fund in large part our groundwater management program, our groundwater recharge activities, and this is at the center of why this district was formed 110 years ago. So this is about as close to the core of our mission as can be. So I think it's totally appropriate that Mr. Zarek is here tonight too. It's worth noting that that the district itself pays the lion's share of the replenishment assessment fees. I think about 94%, over 94% of the overall replenishment assessment revenue comes essentially from the district. About 5.5% is funded by the other pumpers in our service area. But it's an important overall fee to fund our activities and our programs. So with that, I will turn it over to our Director of Water Resources, Ms. Heides.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Tonight's public hearing will be on the proposed increase to the replenishment assessment rate for groundwater pumped or extracted for purposes other than agricultural and municipal recreation. As provided in the District's Replenishment Assessment Act, a public hearing must be held on the second Tuesday in April for the purpose of determining whether and to what extent the cost of replenishing groundwater supplies within the district during fiscal year 2024-25 will be funded by a replenishment assessment. As the board may wish to take action immediately following tonight's public hearing, staff has prepared the remaining 3 resolutions required for the replenishment assessment for fiscal year 2024-25. To provide some background on this item, on November 9th, 2023, the board ordered the preparation of the 2024 survey report on groundwater conditions, also known as the survey report 7 of the District's Replenishment Assessment Act. As a result, the following actions took place. On January 26, 2024, letters were sent to all interested parties identified as part of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, informing them that the board would be discussing and considering items pertaining to the Replenishment Assessment Act at the February 8th, March 14th, and April 9th, 2024 regular Board of Directors meetings. At the February 8th, 2024 regular Board of Directors meeting, the board, 1, received the completed survey report and the 2023 groundwater monitoring report. 2, declared its intent to raise funds by a replenishment assessment in fiscal year 2024-25. And 3, scheduled a public hearing for April 9th, 2024. As required by Proposition 218, affected well owners, operators, and owners of property with production wells were provided written notice of the proposed increase in the replenishment assessment rate for purposes other than agricultural and municipal recreation uses at least 45 days prior to the public hearing. The notice was also posted on the district's website. In addition to information on the proposed increase, the notice included the date, time, and instructions with remote access information for the public hearing and stated that there is a 120-day statute of limitations for challenging any new, increased, or extended fee or charge. On March 14th, 2024, staff presented to the board the report's findings and basis for the recommended replenishment assessment. Staff reviewed its recommendation for a 3.5% increase in the replenishment assessment rate for all uses other than the agricultural or municipal recreation use in fiscal year 2024-25. This would increase the rate from $538 to $557 per acre foot of groundwater pumped. Notice of the date, time, and instructions with remote access information for the public hearing was published in the newspaper, the East Bay Times, as required by the Replenishment Assessment Act. All of the documents referred to above are included on the district website, www.acwd.org. Tonight's hearing is being held in person and virtually. All interested parties may be heard in support of or opposition to the proposed replenishment assessment, the survey report, or the board's determinations. Prior to the beginning of tonight's board meeting, the district has not received any comments on the replenishment assessment. For setting the replenishment assessment for the coming fiscal year, the Replenishment Assessment Act specifies the actions that must be taken through board resolution no sooner than the close of the public hearing, but no later than the second Tuesday of May. The resolutions, 1, contain the findings that update groundwater conditions, and state the amount of replenishment assessment funds needed next fiscal year. 2, set the replenishment assessment rates, $8 per acre foot for agricultural and municipal recreation uses, which is the maximum allowed under the Replenishment Assessment Act, and $557 per acre foot on all other uses. And finding that the modifications to the replenishment assessment are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. And 3, provide procedures and statement forms. Should the board wish to extend the hearing or take additional time to consider the resolutions, the board may schedule a special board meeting or meetings in order to meet the deadline stipulated in the Replenishment Assessment Act. For example, the public hearing must be completed on or before the first Tuesday in May, which is May 7th, and the resolutions adopted on or before the second Tuesday in May, May 14th. Approval of this item is consistent with Strategic Goal 2.1, maintain and enhance sustainability and reliability of local and regional water supplies, and Strategic Goal number 3, improve the district's financial stability and transparency. So tonight, the recommendation before the board is to conduct a public hearing as scheduled and receive comments from the public on the proposed replenishment assessment for fiscal year 2024-25. Then, by motion, adopt the following required resolutions. Number 1, stating findings and determining need for replenishment assessment. 2, levying a replenishment assessment and finding the replenishment assessment exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. And 3, providing procedures for payment of replenishment assessment. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay. Staff presentation is completed. And then
Yes.
moving on, then I'll open up the public comment portion of the hearing. Does the district secretary have any speaker cards submitted this evening?
No, I do not.
No speaker cards. Okay. Do we have any individuals online this evening that would like to speak regarding this item? Seeing none.
And as a reminder, just if you have any comments, just please just raise your hand in the Zoom app and we'll make sure that you're able to speak.
Okay, and seeing none, have we received any written comments regarding this item?
No, we have not.
No written comments, okay. Does any director have any questions from staff or legal counsel based on the questions or comments presented by the public or the staff? No.
I do not. I was satisfied with the earlier presentation that the board received on the matter.
None.
No comments?
No comments, no questions from the public. Any further comments from the board regarding this item?
I do want to thank Mr. Hollowell for all of his dedicated work on the groundwater assessment report. And every year, I really enjoy that presentation for its meticulous detail. Thank you.
Just a comment that there's some oddities in the legislation that was passed by the state government a number of years ago that someday, hopefully we can address, to include the odd date, the second Tuesday in April, as opposed to the normal date of Thursday. So, but time have passed and we've survived with it. So thank you.
Director Weed, I think I've come up with a solution after the convoluted effort we tried to make last year. We just change all of our meetings to Tuesdays.
A little easier.
All right.
That we have the power to do.
Thank you.
Well,
No comments.
I'd like to thank the staff too. Every year, look forward to that report. And talked to several members of the public and they were just fascinated by it. Friends of mine. So with that, I think we're to the point to say the public hearing is closed. Correct? Right. Missed anything? And now we go ahead and consider the resolutions. We have, we can take all three or one by one.
Take them all three if you'd like together.
We can take them all three. Any motions?
I'll move staff recommendation to adopt the three resolutions as described by staff in its presentation, in her presentation.
Motion, is there a second?
I can second.
Second, Secretary, please call the roll.
Directors Huang,
Aye.
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
Akbari, and Gunther.
Aye. Okay, takes care of the calendar. Moving to item 6.1, operational board committee reports. Any comments on the board committee reports?
Yeah, staff has no comments to make, but happy to address any questions.
Hearing none, we'll move on then to operational reports. Any comments on the operational report?
Two quick comments.
Two down in the end.
One on the rainfall report. I think we have our last major storm coming in this weekend. So it was nice to see that we were getting very close to 20 inches of rainfall for the year of our average of around 17, 18. And I think that contributed to the water production report where we have been below our forecast the first 3 months of the year. So people are conserving water, letting Mother Nature do its work out there in their yards. So that was good to see too.
Sure, completely. Hardness report, yeah, it's jumped up a little bit over in Union City, but that's fine. Oh, we have Mr. Nisar would like to comment.
Thank you, President Gunther. Yeah, you beat me to the punch there. I was gonna comment on the hardness map as usual. Yeah, despite the fact that the district is receiving what appears to be locally sourced SFPUC water, whose hardness is 82 at the input, you know, the overall district hardness is trending up, as you said, but you know, I see very few numbers above 150. And again, the desal plant is paying off in spades by providing water that is significantly less than 100 over a good portion of the district's service area. Since this agenda item is looking at all of the operational reports, I also wanted to perhaps ask a question of the finance or the treasurer, and now I can take the answer offline. I just happened, glancing through it, I happen to note that the district has some investments in municipal bonds. And the thought that crossed my mind is that, you know, municipal bonds are typically very safe investments, and they have a place in the investment community because they tend to be multiple tax-free, that is exempt from both federal and state taxation for individual investors. But the district, as far as I understand, doesn't, you know, is not, as a public agency, wouldn't be subject to federal or state income taxes. And municipal bonds typically have a lower yield to offset the disparate tax treatment. So my question, which again I will take offline, has to do with, you know, is the district giving up income by purchasing municipal bonds as opposed to other taxable investments of equal investment grade? So that's it. Thank you very much.
I can give a very brief response. No, we're not giving up any income. Those investments are evaluated by Chandler, our investment portfolio firm, and are only purchased to the extent that they are the best options available under our three investment criteria, which are safety of principal, first, second, liquidity, and third, a market rate of return. But to the comments from Mr. Nishimura, I think those issues probably explain why municipal bonds make up only 2% of our portfolio. So those options where it makes sense are more limited than they are for other types of investments.
Thank you.
Other comments from the public on Zoom meeting? You'll move on to staff presentations.
Staff has no other separate presentations this evening.
General managers reports.
We have a few general managers reports this evening, and to start us off, I will toss it to our acting director of engineering and technology, Mr. Sean O'Reilly, who's got some very good news to report. And as he tells you about that good news, I will pass along the fruits of a lot of people's labor.
All right. The district recently received an award from the American Public Works Association, APWA, which is a group of public employees from local, county, state, and federal agencies, as well as private sector personnel who provide products and services on public works projects. The association has over 32,000 members globally. The Lower Fishway Passage Project, which consists of Rubber Dam 1 Fishway, Rubber Dam 1 Control Building modifications, and Shin Pond Fish Passage projects, won the APWA Northern California Chapter Award on February 22nd, 2024. An application was submitted by ACWD on behalf of both ACWD and the Alameda County Flood Control District. The category of the award is environmental for projects ranging in value between $25 million and $75 million. The project is classified in the environmental category because the fish ladder allows fish migration along Alameda Creek, and the fish screens prevent them from being accidentally pulled from the channel during ACWD's water diversion operations.
So that's the project that keeps on giving. We can stock a whole bookshelf full of the various awards that we've received from staff's work and the board's good policy decisions on that project and our ratepayers' investments. Okay, so we move on to the next item. The next item has to do with AB 1789, Assembly Bill 1789 by Poppin. And this is a bill that a director gave staff some insight about, and so we did some more looking into. It's related to stormwater quality protection, really focusing on 6 ppd and 6 ppdq, or quinone, which are chemical compounds that are very common in automotive tires, and they are used to help to prevent the oxidation, degradation of rubber tires. And in that role, tires wear out as the cars are driving on roadways and freeways. And so this material ends up on the roadways and the streets. But what has been somewhat recently determined is those particular compounds, particularly the 6 ppdq, is extremely toxic to certain aquatic species, mostly salmonids and steelhead. And this is a concern for us. This agency has put, again, as you can see in the award there, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and investment and a lot of effort into protecting migrating steelhead and other species throughout the lower Alameda Creek portion of the channel. And so we certainly have an interest in trying to do what we can to support a restoration of the steelhead fisheries. It's been a big part of what we've been doing. So what AB 1789 does is it seeks to establish a programmatic testing, sort of pilot testing at 5 different locations of different kinds of techniques to prevent this material from being run off of roadways and highways into adjacent or nearby waterways that support salmonid and steelhead migration and habitat. And so staff has been looking into that bill. We've been talking with other agencies, with some of our peers. We've been talking with our Sacramento state legislative consultant. We've been following the bill as it's been going through the state legislature. Just today, the bill was discussed at the Assembly Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials Committee. It was passed with no opposition. I think it was the only bill considered during that committee meeting that had no opposition. But this is just a heads up that staff right now is leaning toward issuing a letter of support for that bill. We've got a couple other check boxes we want to confirm, but we feel like it would be in the district's best interest to express support for the bill. As long as there's no grave objection.
What is our experience in measuring for this contaminant? And do we have any indication that it's in our system?
So ACWD has no experience monitoring for this contaminant. It's very, very likely that it's within Alameda Creek, mostly because there's a lot of street drainage into Alameda Creek, including Highway 84 itself. And the levels that are acutely toxic of these materials are shockingly low. They are on the order of single parts per trillion. And so it doesn't take a lot to be extremely hazardous to these salmonids and steelhead.
Okay. Then 1 parts per trillion, it's probably below the detection.
Yeah, I can tell you, our laboratory supervisor seems to be an expert in everything, and she provided a great deal of information. I can't recall the analytical limits, but my guess is it can be measured at those low levels.
It can be.
Yeah, I would, because the testing has been done to demonstrate that there is acute toxicity at those very low levels.
This is parts per trillion. Didn't we have a similar situation with PFAS where it was below our detection levels when they established the criteria?
Initially, the criteria that we were watching were essentially equal to the lowest analytical level, and the methodology had improved over time, and so that lower level had gone down over time.
A challenge I have in supporting a legislation, we don't have at least no one has mapped it or identified it as being an issue. It may or may not be an issue for us. Support legislation that may make it a significant issue. Raises questions. I trust that rubber dams are not a contributor to this contaminant. But I'd sure like to have some more information before we jump on and say, let's start regulating something that can be another black swan.
Yeah, I think part of the limitation is, as far as I'm aware anyway, there hasn't been broad testing of all the waters in the state. There's been some testing, and so additional data is needed. So what this bill does, it doesn't create a regulation. It doesn't set a standard. What it does is sets up a program for testing various, essentially, treatment devices that could be installed along highways, freeways, roadways, and so forth. And so to test the efficacy of those devices, it's not directly leading to a regulation or setting a particular standard.
Am I incorrect? I thought that this bill was to direct the Department of Transportation to take a look at what might be feasible to protect the stream waters that are near highways.
Yeah, it's actually involving a few different agencies. The Water Board is one, Department of Transportation is another, and the idea is exactly that, to test out different types of essentially treatment systems that would help to form a barrier so that that not all of this can get into the adjacent waterways from roadways.
Yeah, so we reviewed this on the Operations and Water Quality Committee meeting, and I concur with Director Wheat's concern. We don't want to endorse something that puts an onus on the water agencies to solve the problem. And that's not how I read this bill. It was directing other state agencies to kind of come up with a solution that might protect everyone.
Two follow-on thoughts here. The first, there's a program for 25 emerging contaminants that's revised, revisited every 5 years. A lot of politics goes into which components are going to be one of the emerging water contaminants. Is this particular contaminant on any of those lists or even on anyone's radar?
Unless staff knows, I don't know.
And
That's a
that-
good question. I don't recall if it's on the contaminant candidate list, the latest one from the EPA. I'd have to check. Yeah, it's newer, I think.
Nevertheless, it's widely talked about in the fishing community and readable materials, you know, that are tied in with scientific studies and on salmonoids and steelhead.
Next, urban runoff. The capture of urban runoff for reuse. Some of the most contaminated water you can imagine, and this is one more contaminant to add to that program. So hopefully if we go down this path, we will not also have a parallel program of trying to capture urban runoff for reuse. There's a reason you call it wastewater. I recall when on parking lots request at one time, they wanted to put an oil water separator at every parking lot of over more than 50 vehicles, and that number was bound to drop. And then who is going to maintain the oil water separators on both public and private properties? This follows along that same pattern. We can do research, but beware. And they claim they found a connection to a health components like microplastics, but there's been no designated or defined health problem with microplastics, but it's become an quote area of emerging concern. So I'm just reluctant to jump on board a bill. We don't know what the implications are to this district.
I have a couple of questions, if I may. This bill is authored by Diane Papin across the bay, whose father was very instrumental in a number of issues dealing with our own agency. And as a state legislator, this is the first time I heard you say that it went before a committee and it was passed out unanimously. Isn't this the same committee that our Assemblyman Lee chairs?
No, he chaired it either last year or in a prior session. He's not chairing it this year.
Okay. And among the other agencies or peers that we've checked with, who do we have that has provided some response?
So ACWD would be the second water agency on a very long list of supporters, mostly NGOs and industry groups and so forth. In the Bay Area, most of our peers are just taking a watch position. You know, every agency's in a different situation. Some agencies have a lot of even roadways alongside, you know, waterways and so forth, right? And others may or may not share the same priorities and interests that we do with regard to salmonid restoration. So everybody's a little bit different. And so far, everybody that I've spoken with is kind of watching.
Well, having kind of studied this, my own feeling is that we should endorse support on the bill, especially when it comes to, you know, Highway 84 thoroughfare, you know, right next to Alameda Creek. It's not costing the district anything. It's putting the effort on the part of other state agencies to come up with some protective solutions to our waterways, from what I understand.
Yeah, and that's another sort of angle that staff is looking at it as Caltrans is already obligated to install certain types of stormwater treatment as it is. This would be another sort of BMP or best management practice that would potentially be added to that list. And we see it as all of those, if they're protective of the quality of the water in the waterway, benefit ACWD, whether it be because they're in alignment with our fish passage and our fishery restoration interests, or simply with our groundwater recharge and water quality interests overall. So we see it as having several places of alignment with our interests.
I also had a committee with Director Sethy, and I do support the idea. I understand. I mean, the topic itself just gets me. But the thing is, if we support this, it looks like it's going to be doing pilot testing of possible methods. It shouldn't affect us. It should help. And hopefully these pilot testings will prevent the concept of people's doing like the oil water separators on parking lots for 50 cars or more and not understanding who's going to protect them or who's going to maintain them. How are you going to install them and bring some sanity to potential response? So I'm supportive of sending it. I also, we owe her father, Bosca. So, I mean, he and John Dutra carried our sword years ago when we needed it. And I think this could help us. Granted, it could always, anytime you're talking about a contaminant like this, PFAS, microplastics, there's always that opportunity to get hit. Because water's, source water or drinking water is an easy target. This one seems to be working to say, okay, let's keep it from getting to us. Right now, there's nothing stopping it. So I'm good with it. But I'd still like to see some more research.
I'm in the same boat. I think we have such a great project with Alameda Creek Fish Passage Project. We spent a lot of our customers' money working on that project. I think it behooves us to look for all alternatives that would minimize contaminant from going into the creek, right? Especially when we're not paying for it. So, I think supporting it is not a commitment to actually spend customers' money. And in terms of Director Wee's comment, in terms of health effect, we are talking about ecological effect, not human health effect here, right? It's to salmonids. I just looked it up. Apparently, there's a study in 2022 that says that the LC50, which is a legal concentration of 50%, is for salmon is less than 0.1 microgram per liter. The trout and Ringo trout and brook trout is a little bit higher. The detection limit is definitely lower than that. So it is detectable with the current published MDO. And I'm actually looking at a commercial test labs website. So it is commercially available. So I think there's not the type of uncertainty when we started looking at PFAS or other emerging contaminant where the detection limit is kind of iffy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as far as I'm concerned, supporting this thing, if we choose to go that route, there's not really a lot of downside, but a lot of upside. So.
Okay, and my abstention will be based on the risk of a slippery slope as we go down any of these.
We're not voting, we're just commenting.
We're just commenting at the moment. We haven't got the.
And yet another argument to get the heck out of any open channel, including Alameda Creek, when it comes to our water supply.
Are we making council nervous?
No, your general manager gave a report. It sounds like he got some input from the board and that's what he's looking for.
Thank you.
Okay.
So ready to move on to the next one, because even though the list on the agenda packet is done, I'm not. So we have.
On to the next one.
Okay. The next one actually is some really helpful information that's to be about the economy of the State Water Project, and Ms. Heides has some more information about that.
Thanks, Mr. Stevenson. So in December, you may have seen a report that was published on the economy of the State Water Project done by the California Department of Water Resources and the Berkeley Research Group, which is a global economic consulting firm. So this covers, the economic benefits of the State Water Project. And it's available online, the full report, and there's also a nice summary brochure. And so you may have already seen some highlights online, but we wanted to share the brochure with the board. We've received some nice printed copies from the state water contractors. So those are being passed out to you. And there's copies available in the back for anyone that's interested. And we've also made it available with tonight's online board meeting materials as well. If you want to read the full report, you can either scan the QR code here, or on the online version, there's a link that you can get to it and read the full report if you're interested. So that's my quick report. I'm happy to answer questions at a future time if you've got them.
Okay,
Is that it?
we have two more, super quick.
Comments on this one?
Two more. Comments certainly may.
I
But
was
this one
sitting-
wasn't on the agenda, so we don't want to have too much discussion about
Okay,
it.
sat in on a Delta Conveyance Authority, Design Construction Authority meeting when this was first presented. And flashback to my days in an agricultural economics research associate at the University of Arizona, and Bill Martin, who was written up in Cadillac Desert. It's not a sound economic business case. There's a great deal of emphasis on the $19 billion to agriculture when we're talking about a $1.5 trillion economy. So the economic effects of this project, which will be primarily paid for by on the other side of the ledger, it was Delta Conveyance was supposed to be no additional water supply mainly, but better water quality. And agriculture doesn't need higher water quality. So it's, in the abstract, a flawed approach to economic analysis. But it's good PR. So let it go. Thank you.
Okay. Additional.
Okay, yes, we have some great news that will be provided by our Director of Finance and Administration, Mr. Wunderlich.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. The California Municipal Treasurers Association has a certification program for local agency investment policies. And so I am pleased to report that earlier today we were informed that we had qualified for recognition by the Treasurers Association certification program. And what that recognizes is that the CMTA has validated our policy in that it adheres with not just state of California government code, but also meets program requirements, meaning best management practices within 18 different topical areas for local agency investment policy. So it's a very thorough program. And I think this reflects the wonderful work that we've done with the board, with our finance and administration committee, as well as with staff and our investment portfolio advisor the last number of years to really strengthen our policy. And so we wanted to share that with the board.
Congrats.
We're gonna need more bookcases around here, or trophy cases, I guess. One last quick item, and it's just a heads up. On April 27th, Saturday, there will be what's called PrepCon 4. So this is a community group is working with a whole bunch of agencies, including ACWD, emergency preparedness and response agencies, and NGOs and so forth in the Fremont area, and is holding kind of a be prepared for problems, disasters, emergencies kind of event. Fremont Fire will be there. Fremont Police will be there. Several organizations will be there, including ACWD, talking about how to prepare for that disaster, that fire, that earthquake, and lots of other types of difficulties. CAL FIRE will be there. Red Cross will be there. Alameda County Sheriff's Office, and so forth and so on. So it's just letting you know this will be at the LDS Church at 48950 Green Valley Road in Fremont. That's near the intersection of Scott Creek and Green Valley. That's again Saturday the 27th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And I think it does conflict with the state of the city address by the city of Newark. So if you're making plans, you'll have to pick one. But I just want to make sure the board's aware of that. Staff will be there with bells on, sharing our information with our customers as well.
That would be an ACWD, qualified event for board, or do you, if more than 3 board members are present, can we have them at this type of a joint event without having to declare a board meeting?
I'm not that familiar with the event, but I assume it's open to the public.
It's open to the public. All public's encouraged to attend. The district is supporting it. We'll be present, handing out our material and so forth.
Yeah, so if it's open to the public, then, and you're just doing it within the general parameters of what the agenda is and not talking about district business amongst yourself outside of the content of that program, it would be exempt from the requirements of the
Would
Brown
that
Act.
qualify for board attendance?
It is not held by the city of Fremont. This is a local community group. Off the top of my head, I would say probably not, but if you'd like, we can look into that.
The state of the city addresses though. Yeah. For Newark.
Yeah.
I will just comment that I'm really very surprised at the location for this event because it's in the most remote place in Fremont, you know, up on the foothills. And they would have been much better off if they had done this exercise down at the Fremont Community Center or even at the LDS church that's on Walnut, where they have a large parking lot too, somewhere that would be central to Fremont. And I hope we can provide some feedback. That's a really poor
I think the
location.
church is involved. I think that's one of the reasons. I know that they've had this event in other locations in the past. And don't worry, I don't take offense because that's very close to my house. And so I don't want to take offense that I live out in the middle of nowhere.
Well, Warm Springs is remote for most of Fremont. Okay.
Okay, so that completes our general manager's reports for this evening.
Okay, I'll now turn to item number 7 over my
Yeah.
jealousy regarding Mr. Sethy's.
Did we have a handout for the board here tonight?
We do
So-
indeed, and this is also on our website too, under supplemental materials for the board meeting.
Okay, I thank you for helping me put that together last week. So I'm going to start with the South Bay Engineers meeting last week on Thursday. Director Weed attended it also. Very interesting meeting by the senior engineer at East Bay Mud, who, thank you very much, who handles all of the cathodic protection on the pipeline system for East Bay Mud. And was very interesting scientifically because a lot of East Bay Mud's pipeline system is galvanized iron pipe of 4 to 8 inches in diameter. And it's a district that's comparably old with their distribution system to ACWD. And so we got to see some really good examples of what happens when certain piping systems are not well protected and even water tanks. I'll quickly note that, and the presentation is available if you want to go online for it. But I found it interesting that they have 4,000 miles of pipeline in the system. We have around 900. And they have on average 600 main breaks a year in their service area, which he said is just about the industry average for the water industry. So this is a big headache for them. They can't catch up quick enough on main renewal, main replacement. Their target is to consistently over the last 20 or 25 years do 20 miles a year. And it is charged with a special fee on people's bills for the seismic upgrades and the water main replacements. One other interesting thing he had in his presentation was showing the interior of water large water tanks that are being refurbished or brand new, and they had the cathodic rods that are running all through the walling of the tank. But he showed off one brand new tank, which is, I believe, 1,000,000 gallons. And it had no posts inside the interior like the other tanks did. It had a shallow geodesic dome over the top of the tank. And after the presentation was done, I asked him about that concept, and he said it was entirely driven by the site where they wanted to give the best earthquake protection. And that geodesic dome over the tank gave the entire structure a certain amount of integrity that they would not have had with the posts. And close to my home, I've been watching periodically the tear down and rebuild of Alameda Reservoir, where we do have those large, tall posts in the interior. So yeah, I found it quite interesting. I'll let Director Weed comment.
Although not on the agenda, I did attend the same meeting. And it's, you've failed to realize how large East Bay Mud is, covering both water supply as well as much of the sanitary services in their service area. And the geographical diversity, in addition to the social and economic diversity of their service area. And the ability to have specialists in certain areas, such as cathodic protection. They're an organization that has large enough that they're able to get people who are really good in that niche. And I had the feeling that this fellow was really good in his niche. Thank you.
There's a shortage of engineers going into that field too. So there's a real opportunity for young people graduating to pursue something that they can specialize in. So I know we have closed door sessions coming up, and I'll try to be as quick as I can here, but the Water Education Foundation Lower Colorado River Tour was just an extraordinary educational experience. And I think this is the 5th tour I've been on by the foundation in California. This one extended across 3 states, California, Nevada, and Arizona. And I'll just highlight a few things. I have provided the detailed itinerary that we followed. I told you it was like going through boot camp up at 5 a.m. in the morning and not turning in at 11 all week long. And I wanted to boil down, and I provided some backup material here too, the attendees, the speakers, and the route that we followed on the tour, which was quite extensive. So I kind of broke this down into, I asked myself after the trip, what were the most important things I learned? And I boiled it down to 3 things. 1, I represent this district on the Los Vaqueros Reservoir, JPA. And the Bureau of Reclamation is very involved in that project and providing sources of funding from the WIN Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act in complement to what we're going to receive from the California Water Commission from Prop 1 funds. And the Bureau has always been kind of a mystery to me, serving on that board. And I have not been involved directly with the meetings with Reclamation. But we had 10 people here out of 50 that were from the Bureau of Reclamation. So I was able to really have one-on-one discussions with people and learn that I have responsibility for over 600 dam and water conveyance projects around the country. Los Vaqueros Reservoir is very high on their list of projects to be completed in California. They were excited to talk to fellow board member who's interfacing and what the interests of our district are. So that was just a really healthy learning all the aspects of reclamation and how they're divided up and where the responsibilities lie and how we can leverage them. Number two, I'm the chair of the Delta Conveyance Finance Authority. John, Director Weed serves on the Design and Construction Authority. And we have 11 members, the 3 South Bay contractors and 8 Southern California state water contractors. And this was the first time I had an opportunity to visit the territory and service areas of those water districts and learn firsthand from representatives of their organizations and see with boots on the ground what really is going on. And Coachella Valley is one of the important of those other 8 districts, and Metropolitan is too. And we finished up our trip in the Coachella Valley, which the night before it had snowed on both mountain ranges, and it was spectacularly beautiful. It's a location in California most people don't go to. I am very fond of the Salinas Valley. I think people know that. I didn't grow up there, but this reminded me of the Salinas Valley with the 2 mountain ranges on both sides, about half the length and more narrow. But when you see snow down halfway down each mountain range and how lush and green it is in the center where they're growing citrus and dates and all kinds of agricultural products, it was quite spectacular. And on the other, and they started implementing drip irrigation in the 1980s. So they're almost all drip irrigation in the Coachella Valley. On the other hand, just to the southeast of them is the Imperial Valley, where everything is flood irrigated. There's no cost on the water. There's just a cost for delivery and time of delivery. And so you see this huge excess waste of water throughout that, what is a very large part of our state. And there's no economic incentive to conserve. And then you have all the excess fertilizers, salt waters draining into the Salton Sea, which is another man-made ecological disaster. So I'll leave it at that. And then third thing was, so I think we have our meeting for DCFA coming up next Thursday in Sacramento, and I'm going to give a report there because I think this helps to build a bond and friendship with the other board members that I didn't have before, to actually see and witness what's going on in their own districts. The third thing I learned was, I think, very important for projects that we're involved with, and this is coming from everything I learned about the state of affairs at Metropolitan, which we don't really have good insight into. But one of our presenters was Bill Hassenkamp. He is the Water Resources, Colorado River Resources Manager. I think he's an assistant general manager as well. And he gave some wonderful presentations on the water supply situation for Met. And I had a chance to talk with him at lunch and also extensively at dinner, and was really trying to feel him out on what the commitment is by Met to the future Delta conveyance system. And first thing that he illuminated to our audience on was the fact that because of the judicial decree that they have been under for think 3 decades now with Mono Lake. Mono Lake is not rising at the level that people thought. And so the diversions in the Owens Valley by Met are being continually cut back. And he said, we fully expect that we're going to be cut to zero. Right now, they're at about 6% of their water supply comes from, 5% from Owens Valley coming down the Los Angeles Aqueduct. And that used to be the primary supply. That's what Mulholland built, right? Primary water supply to LA, and now it's now only 5% of their water supply. Second, out of the Colorado River, because a lot of it is being diverted into Arizona, California only gets 18% of that water. Of that 18%, Met has only 6% of its water supply coming out of that 18%. So now they're faced with using up all of their reserves on many projects in their communities. They're down to only about 350 million in reserves. Imagine the largest water district in the state, and we're at about 200 million or close to that as a small agency, mid-size agency. And he was telling our group that in the last 2 droughts, Diamond Lake was full of water, but they had no way to convey that water to the western communities, and they had to put in extreme conservation measures and raise people's rates quite a bit. For the west side of Los Angeles, where many wealthier communities are, and people got upset. So now they're looking at building a $6 billion pipeline from Diamond Lake to the west side of Los Angeles. And we know the early estimates on the Delta is at 16 billion. It's probably going to go up on the reassessment later this year. So what he was telling us, Bill Hassenkamp, was that, yeah, we know we need to build that $6 billion pipeline for easing our distribution efforts, but we can't live without water coming through the Delta. And so we have to figure out a way to finance that thing and make it happen. And he was giving me insight into where their management is, how they're trying to lead the board right now, which is quite split, you know, when it comes to making these huge investments. But it was encouraging to hear from someone senior say, you know, we all have to work together to make this happen and have a permanent, reliable solution through the Delta. And he says we need to keep reminding people this is not a Southern California water grab. It is a reliability project. And we need to keep preaching that. So those were the 3 things that really helped me on the trip, tying in with LVR, ECFA, and then really learning in detail how dependent Metropolitan and all of these other Southern California agencies that I work with, where I represent ACWD, how important the solution in the Delta is. So I hope that's not too lengthy of a presentation, but I thank people for their time, and I hope you will take a look at this extraordinary excursion I went on.
Question, if I might. Where in the general timeline is the decision whether they go slow, go in its current pace, or accelerate Delta conveyance?
They indicated by Labor Day of this year, they're going to make a decision, and the general manager of Met is trying to work through different meetings with his board right now, committee meetings, to get them to that stage.
And I'd note that a second major player, Valley Water District, has recently come to the realization that you can't fund all your big projects at the same time.
Right. Let me throw out one last thing. We took a group photo the first day at the very bottom of Hoover Dam, which was incredible. To go through the interior of Hoover Dam, go through the entire history of its construction. And by the way, the concrete and stone in the dam is still curing today. It's hard to believe. And, we took a group picture right at the very bottom of the exterior of the dam and had lunch, at the spillway overlooking, Lake Mead, which was about 150 feet below its, 1983 top. And I was on the trip with, Pierce Swan we had several directors, and Pierre had pictures of the dam when he was there in 1983, when it was absolutely brim full and the spillway was gushing over. So I encourage anyone who wants to go on one of these Water Education Foundation trips that it's like getting cramming an entire college course in 3 or 4 days. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the report. Item 8.1.
Yeah, item 8.1 is to appoint agency designated representatives for labor negotiations between the district and its employee groups, operating engineers Local 3, the Alameda County Water Districts Operators Association, and unrepresented management, confidential, and professional employees. And staff recommends that the board designate John Wunderlich, Amy Reeve, Stacy Q with IEDA, and Ed Stevenson as your agency negotiators.
You need a motion to that effect?
Yes, the board needs to take.
Also move.
Motion second.
I'll second.
Motion second. Secretary, please call the roll.
Directors Huang,
Aye.
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
Akbari, and Gunther.
All right.
Yeah, closed session. Council, do you want to read these or you want me to do it?
Sure, I'm happy to do it. It's now 7:38 and the board is going to go into closed session for 2 different items. The first 9.1 is pursuant to California Government Code Section 54597.6, conference with labor negotiators, agency designated negotiators, Stacy Q, Ed Stevenson, John Wunderlich, and Amy Reeve, employee organization, operator engineers Local 3, and the Alameda County Water District Operators Association. And for the second closed session, item 9.2, pursuant to California Government's Code Section 54597.6, conference with labor negotiators, agency designated negotiators, Stacy Q, Ed Stevenson, John Wunderlich, Amy Reeve, and unrepresented employees, management, confidential, professional employees. And we can now convene into closed session.
Yeah, before we report out from the closed session, we wanted to recommend that the board take some additional action related to item 8.1. And that is to remove Stacy Q from being involved in the negotiation, being designated as one of the agency negotiators related to the management, confidential, and professional items. So the only designated negotiators related to the management, confidential, and professional group would be Amy Reeve, John Wunderlich, and myself, Ed Stevenson. So if we could get that additional action by the board, we could proceed.
I'll move staff recommendation.
Second.
Motion second. Please call the roll.
Directors Huang,
Aye.
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
Akbari, and Gunther.
All right. Okay, request council read us out of closed session.
Yeah, and with that, I'm happy to give the open session reports for the closed sessions. The board met in closed session for 2 items. 9.1 was pursuant to California Government Code Section 94957.6. And just for the record, that there's a typo in the agenda and the way I read it going into closed session. So the correct code section is 54957.6. Conference with labor negotiators, agency designated negotiators for Stacy Q, Ed Stevenson, Jonathan Wunderlich, and Amy Reeve. The employee organization was Operating Engineers Local 3 and Alameda County Water Districts Operators Association. And in that closed session, direction was given to the agency designated representatives. In the second closed session, 9.2, pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957.6, again, correcting the agenda, conference labor negotiators, the agency designated negotiators in that closed session were Ed Stevenson, John Wunderlich, and Amy Reeve, and Stacy Q did not participate in that closed session. And it was with the unrepresented employees, management, confidential professional employees, and in that closed session, direction was given to the agency designated representatives. And that concludes the open session reports.
Okay. Closed session reported out. We're now to item 10, adjournment, and at 9:28, call the meeting adjourned.
Okay.